I'm currently hiding in my childhood bedroom. I feel like a teenager waiting for my parents to go to bed so I can sneak out on the roof and smoke a joint, but I'm 40 and I just want to film a book tag while my mom's sleeping and isn't going to interrupt me. Let's do a book tag, guys. Hello, book friends. Welcome back to the channel. Hello if you are new. I'm going to try to speak a little bit more softly because my mother is sleeping. It is about 11:30 at night. Hopefully the camera doesn't shake too much because we're filming this on my childhood bed in my childhood bedroom. This was not blue when I was a kid. This was like the worst girly pink wallpaper you've ever seen in your entire life. Nothing about this room has ever been my take on anything. Thankfully, the only two things that I love about this room have survived and will hopefully survive until I have a place to put them in my own home. It's that desk behind me that my dad refinished for me and the sleigh bed we are sitting on that my dad refinished for me when I was a kid. Everything else, I could leave it. But these are my things and I love them. But anyway, that's not why we're here. But this does feel like good place to film this book tag. I first saw this book tag on Claire Fenby Warren's channel, but it's an original tag from Roz over at, I always say her channel name wrong, Scally Dangling About the Books. I said that wrong, but it's an original book tag from Roz. It is the Reread book tag. I just thought it was a really fun little tag to talk about some books that I maybe don't get to talk about. Well, some that I probably talk about too much and others that I don't get to talk about enough, I think, since a lot of these books, most of these books, except for maybe one, have been read probably for the first time in this room. I thought this would be a good place to film it. I also found this Culture Pop, Wild Berries and Lime soda. I don't know, it sounded like it was like kombucha meets soda. So we're going to try this too and not get this on my bed or my computer. Anyway, there's probably a lot of background noises. It's much louder here at my mom's house than at my house. She lives like off a main road in like a much more populated area than I do. And I'm here because I have to take her to an appointment very early in the morning, and she lives like an hour from me. So I've taken my glasses off. So if the computer's like here, don't mind me. The glare from the light will drive you all nuts. So computer is going in my face. So this is a book tag all about rereading, whether you reread, talking about rereading. And I know that on the podcast, Naomi and I talk about this often, how little she does reread. It does feel like there are lots of people who like to reread books over and over again. And it seems to be something that's very personal. Some people really love to do it, some people don't. And I just thought this was a lovely little book tag to talk about rereading and books. So let's go into it. So the first prompt is, let's assume you do reread. If you're doing this tag, I would assume you're rereading, right? So where do you sit on the rereading scale from almost never to all the time? I would say I probably read about 3 or 4 books over every year. Sometimes it's rereading something just to reread it. Sometimes it's rereading it for the podcast to refresh my memory. Sometimes it's just rereading the first couple in a series so that I can read the final or the next in the installment in a series. So I probably read maybe 3 or 4. It's probably more than that, but I would say like I will read probably definitely 3 or 4. I know I've already reread the whole Darker Shade of Magic trilogy in September. I reread Greek lessons to be able to talk about it again. I'm restarted Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein because I really do feel like I need to give that book another try to go back into it because the writing was so brilliant and I just feel like there's more to it. So that's definitely that's 5 already, if you count the trilogy as each one book. I do, and this isn't terrible. 2, has that changed over your reading life? I think I go through periods where I reread more than others. I don't know what exactly sparks it, and I can't remember if this is a prompt already, but sometimes you just feel called to reread something, and then sometimes it's a little bit more like businessy academic where like I have to reread it for, an episode we're recording or for, I don't know, for something else or to like have a debate with a friend over a book or something. But like A Darker Shade of Magic, I've been wanting to reread for a long time and I just haven't gotten around to it because rereading an entire series or trilogy is always sort of daunting to me because I want to have time to read new things because so many things come out every year. like every week you hear about new books that are so amazing, and it, to put aside time to reread something or three books like in a succession that you've already read before feels like I'm taking time away from new books. But knowing that some of my friends were reading it too, it was kind of nice. And it made it easier for me to just bite the bullet and finally do that reread. And I'm so glad I did because I really loved it. I'm definitely allergic to something in my mom's house. Prompt 3, when do you reread? Maybe immediately after finishing a book or not till years later when the mood strikes. I do think it's when the mood strikes. I do think sometimes it coincides with somebody else doing something like this reread for A Darker Shade of Magic. I think if somebody else is rereading it, maybe on a buddy read thing, or if a friend decides to dive into a series or to finally pick up a book that I loved, I might reread it while they're reading it so that we can kind of experience it together, and I can be there like alongside, like a running coach, like alongside while they're reading something that I adore for the first time. And they get to like, they're like, oh my God, chapter 16. And you're like, yeah, I know. And you can really dive into the text and talk to each other about it. Then I really like to reread. Otherwise, it's really just like when the mood strikes, but usually something external sparks it. Why do you reread? So there's a couple of reasons. Sometimes, like for a study for obedience, I'm rereading it so that I can make a final decision on how I feel about a book because I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, but I felt like there was something I was kind of missing that would answer the question of like, how do you really truly feel? So I can stand more firmly in that opinion, I guess. And then sometimes it's just the nostalgia, like Darker Shade of Magic reread, just to go back to a world that I haven't been to in a while, that I sometimes think about, but I probably have forgotten a lot about, and be surprised by the things that I've forgotten, and the joy of remembering them again. And like, I forgot how much I love Alucard, and yeah, so there's that. Sometimes I'll just change format. Maybe I read something physically and I want to listen to it, or vice versa. And that can sometimes give me a better experience or a different experience, which is kind of what happened with Greek lessons, where like I wasn't really sold on it when I read it on my e-reader as an early arc. So then to prep for our discussion on TBR Lowdown, I did listen to it, and it was a different experience. And I think it rounded out and made my overall experience with the book better. Sometimes just changing format helps, and I do like doing that. But then, like, I guess some books are like just kind of old friends, so I will casually just pick them up and reread them because I want that reconnection with the book, to check in with my old pals and make sure they're still doing what they're doing in their book, Yeah, I think that's why I reread. How do you reread? Faster, slower, just the best bits? I think it's interesting to think about just diving into the best bits of a book. And I guess that would be the point of annotations, is to go back and reflect on like the passages or moments that you really loved. I wonder, do any of you do that? I don't do that. I do like to have annotations in my books so that when I pick them up again and reread them, I can like see my past annotations. I don't annotate everything, but it's more like there's like this call to annotate, and so then I'll annotate a book. And I've really been liking my Scribe because I've been getting more into ebooks again. I think because of my Scribe, because I can write on them. Also, The Surviving Sky is really good if you're looking for a really interesting sort of atypical sci-fi. This is really good. I don't think I read any faster or slower. I think I just read. I probably read it a bit faster because I've already read the book once. 6, who or what do you reread? More specifically, which authors or genres or individual books? It's probably easier to talk about what I don't reread than what I do reread. I don't reread like mystery thrillers. I know there's lots of people who reread the Agatha Christie's over and over again, but like I just don't see the point in rereading mysteries. And when I started sort of getting back into books, and what made me want to start in like bookish social medias was I went through a thriller phase, and I did have a lot of thrillers like in my collection, and I was buying a lot of thrillers, but like I don't I don't reread them, so I don't tend to keep them now. I do still have lots and lots of mysteries and thrillers in the house, and they all come from my mom because my mom and my aunt read a lot of mystery thrillers, and they send them to me. And then every so often, I'll pick one up and I'll read it, and then I tend to either bring it back to them or get rid of them because I just don't keep them, so I never really go back to them. I'm trying to think if there's any time I've ever gone back to a mystery or thriller, and I just don't think there is. I generally reread like fantasy to either reread the entire like series like I just did with The Darker Shade of Magic, or I'm reading, like I said, like a book before the next book comes out. I'm like I'm rereading what I've already read, or like the book before, or doing some sort of refresh so that I'm ready for the next book in a series. Or I just reread lit fic. A lot of it is classics. Interestingly, when I sat down to do like one of these prompts is talking more specifically about books that you reread a lot of it is classics. And I don't know why, maybe because when I was younger, that's like I said, a lot of these books that I reread frequently, I've read here for the first time when I was younger, and for some reason those tend to be classics. Yeah, I find that I reread classics more than I reread like more contemporary works. I'm definitely curious. I have in my notes here, maybe we need a reread marathon. Does anybody want to have like a month where we just reread favorites, or like 2 weeks in a random period of the year where we reread some of our favorites? If anybody is interested in that, I'd be down for that. It's actually really hard without my glasses to look at that light and then look at the light of my screen and then see everything. I am so blind. So number 7, is there a book that you found better when you reread it? The obvious one is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. And interestingly, I feel the same way as Claire Fenby Warren, who's the person I found this tag through. She was talking all about her experience with Mrs. Dalloway, which is kind of very similar to mine. And I wonder if there's more of us that feel this way. Is that the first time I read it, I was unsure of it. And I did find myself spacing out sort of in moments as I went through. But then I also found that like I couldn't get parts of it out of my head. And then, I mean, maybe a year later, I mean, for like, I think like almost a whole year, this book would just pop in and out of my head. Like a year later, I was hurt and I was at work, and I was, it was like after hours, and I was like sitting at a desk because I couldn't do my real job and I needed something to do. And somehow I just ended up on this deep dive into Virginia Woolf and Mrs. Dalloway and her life and her works and this particular book and the things that happen in this book. And then I did a reread, and I think I've read it 3 or 4 times now and need to do another reread. And I feel like it's this weird book that just kind of grew on me. And every time I've read it, I've liked it more. And the more that I've learned about the book and about her and about the scenes that get touched on throughout the story, I become more enamored with this book. It's really good. She has such a beautiful way of writing. And then I love her other stories and how different they are, like how different Orlando is to the waves, to Mrs. Dalloway, to her essays like A Room of One's Own. I know she's got her like problematic things, but I really do love Virginia Woolf. Definitely Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway, I found better on reread, and I'm glad that I did reread it. 8, is there one that was worse? I don't know if any books ever gotten worse on rereading, on rereading. I don't know. I would assume it would probably be something that like I read when I was fairly young, or like some random fantasy that I thought was really good and then I didn't connect with later. But like I haven't found one yet. So it's kind of a cop out answer, but I haven't found one yet. Typically, what makes me want to reread a book is such a strong connection to a story that I would be hard pressed to not like it on reread. And if I don't have such strong feelings, like with like Greek lessons, there was enough positive that I knew that I wasn't going to like it less. I was maybe going to have the same opinion or better. So it hasn't happened yet. So there's still time. The final question is, which one book, which I don't have one book, have you reread the most times? I have maybe like 4 books that I've reread the most. And I do tend to read one of these, it feels like almost every year. I think there was a year I read all 4 of these at once. And I wonder which one it'll be this year because I haven't read any of them yet. But I would say like Rebecca by Daphne and Maurier. It's my all-time favorite book. I love that book. It's also the book I have the most editions of. Essentially, these 4 books are the books I have the most multiple editions of, and that I think is what tells you that it's a favorite. It gets reread all the time because I want to have every edition. Of course, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, but I would add in on that. Like, I don't just read Pride and Prejudice often. I will read almost any adaptation or spin-off or like tangentially related story to Pride and Prejudice that gets written because I just love them. I love the characters. I love when people write stories about sort of the peripheral characters. There was a book that came out recently, or maybe a year ago, about Anne de Berg. Loved it. Let Anne have her moment, you know? And like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, still love it. Is it like a literary masterpiece? No. Was that fun? Hell yeah, it was. Stand Pride and Prejudice and all things Pride and Prejudice related. I will ingest that story, be it from Jane Austen or anybody else, over and over and over again and be quite happy. And that actually might be the story I've read the most, but moving on. Of course, Mrs. Dalloway, that has made it to this list. And then Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre, always Jane Eyre. I love Jane Eyre. And reading Jane Eyre as a teenager and reading Jane Eyre as like a 30-something-year-old adult has been such an interesting experience. And then I feel like I've read Jane Eyre in my teens, in my 20s, in my 30s. And I think that I could read this book in every decade of my life and kind of have a different perspective on it. And I find the Bronte sisters so very interesting. Even though I hate like Wuthering Heights, it's still like this amazingly, phenomenally written story. Like if you actually look, like the writing is so beautiful. The story is just, I hate it so much. I just feel like these sisters are just so talented and amazing. And Jane Eyre just like that was love at first read for me. And I think I've probably watched like every adaptation of like these as well. If there's an adaptation, I have watched it because I just want to consume the story in as many ways as possible. So yeah, I think that's it. Those are all the prompts. I thought this was like just like a fun, sort of quiet little tag that we could do, and as I hide in my childhood bedroom. And I guess I'm gonna tag a couple people below. If I tagged you, feel free to do this. Otherwise, if you want to do this, please go ahead and do this. Just make sure you tag the original creator, which I've linked down below. Give me a little tag. So like, or be like, yo, Alyssa, send it to me. I don't know, like alert me so I can see yours because I love to see everybody else's responses to this, especially the books that you reread all the time. I'd love to know the books you reread all the time. So if you're not going to do the tag because you just are a viewer and you don't want to film videos, which is totally cool, thanks for watching. Tell me in the comments, like, what books do you reread the most? Like what, like if you're on a desert island, you need these books with you, you get like 4 or 5 of them. These are the only books you could reread for the rest of your life. Like, what are you bringing? What are you bringing with you? I want to know. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, for being here, for all the support that you guys give me. I'm a little like out of it. A lot of things are going on right now, like behind the scenes, and I'm very overwhelmed and all that. And I'm trying to keep all the balls in the air right now. So I'm very stressed, and it's probably evident by some of my videos and how kind of out of it I am. So I appreciate everybody is here and all the lovely comments that I do get. And sometimes I even like the not lovely ones because they make me laugh at their ridiculousness. But anyway, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me, trying to find another way to say this.